Do you know if this is human blood?
It wasn't tested, if that's what you're getting to.
Do you know whose blood it is?
Given the circumstance, there was only one person who bled in that garage.
Okay, but you would be guessing when you tell this jury that you know whose blood it is, wouldn't you?
I think I'd be formulating an opinion based on the incident and all the information we had regarding the incident.
Well, how old is the stain?
The stain?
Yeah, the stain of blood on the back of this vehicle. Do you know how old it is?
I don't, but it was consistent with the blood that was on the floor.
Do you know on the same car where the stain of what appears to be blood is, on top of that car is a game cart?
Yes.
What's a game cart?
I'm not a hunter. I believe it's a device with 2 or 3 wheels that you put pieces of game animals that are too large to carry on to get them from where you shoot them to your car.
Do animals that have been shot ever have blood coming out of them when they're being transported in a game cart?
I suppose, yes.
If you suspected that this was a blood sample, and if you suspected that it perhaps came from the deceased in this case, you could have sent it to a serologist for testing, right?
Yes.
And in fact, you had access to a serologist in this case, right?
Correct.
I mean, she testified here, right? Yes?
Yes.
Now, regarding blood spatter evidence, I think we could agree that blood distribution spatters can often provide us with valuable information, right?
I'd agree.
Were any of these spatters measured with a ruler?
Was it measured?
Yes. Did you measure this, what appears to be blood, somebody's blood, in the back of this car? Did you measure this with any kind of a ruler?
I did not.
Do you know if any height or distance measurements were taken from the source to anywhere else?
I did not.
And you don't know, nobody else did they?
I don't believe so.
Well, you would know because you have all the case files, correct?
Correct.
So we don't even know the source of this blood, right? Can't.
Based on the overall investigation and what occurred in the garage, the
You're
source
guessing.
is from Deeren.
You're guessing it's Dee Dee's blood, right?
I wouldn't agree that it's a guess. I would say it's a deductive decision based on the overall investigation.
Do you know that the shape of blood changes depending upon what type of surface it falls on?
Yes.
How many peer-reviewed papers have you ever authored on blood spatter analysis?
None.
What science do you rely on when you look at this photo to tell us where Day Day's body was before or after the shots?
What was the first part of your question?
What science do you rely on to tell this jury where Day Day's body was before or after the shots?
I used common sense and my training experience on being exposed to lots of crime scenes with blood and the transfer of blood to surfaces and my observations.
Can you tell us what science you might have relied on to tell us whether Day Day was holding a weapon?
I'm not an expert, so I'd rely on the science, and you made that clear, so.
Okay. What science do you rely on when you try to tell us what direction he may or may not have been facing based on this photograph?
You're asking me what direction I think Deeren was facing?
I'm asking you what science you rely on in making that opinion.
Again, it was based on common sense and the total investigation to that point of what went on in the garage.
Based on the evidence collected by the people that you instructed to collect evidence.
Correct.
And you would agree that there's no science that you relied on to determine where he might have been facing or not facing when any of the shots were fired, correct?
I disagree, because in that shot that you're talking about, he shot in the front of the head. He has to be facing the barrel of the weapon, so they would be facing each other.
Right, but you don't know where he was in the garage for any of the shots, correct? There's no science that can tell us where Day-Day was positioned in that garage during any of those 4 shots, correct?
I would disagree.
That there's a science we can rely on?
Well, you have a compounded question there. You're asking the science, and you're asking if there's no way to prove where he wasn't in the garage.
I'm asking the question whether or not there is any science that you relied on to make the opinion of knowing where he was standing in the garage at any of the shots. Is there any science that you can rely on to make that opinion?
Based on the blood evidence and where Mr. Kaarma and Ms. Flagler said he fired from at the open door to the impact points along the opposite east wall, yes, I would say you can position him in the garage.
Okay. And when you say based on blood evidence, you mean this photograph?
That's some of it.
You said you had about 100 hours of homicide investigation training, right?
I think 120, 130.
It's a lot of hours, right?
I'd say it's a fair amount.
And you've been a police officer for about 24 years, I think you said?
Correct.
And that 100 hours is about 3 weeks of training, correct?
Sure, yes.
Did you tell us, or would you tell us, how many hours of training you've had in self-defense shooting investigations?
Specifically self-defense, I can't specifically recall.